Everybody thinks that entrepreneurs are all about the money. We're actually about freedom. For me, it's about what's possible. What do you think we could do? It's easier to double or triple your business in 2 to 3 years than it is to have 10% increments. My job is to help with owners think at a different level. It's looking at how they think as opposed to what they do. If you can support people in being able to bring their best, everything just works so much better. As it continues to grow, it continues to get harder. Now, here's the piece why it looks like it gets easier, because business owners get better. We figure stuff out, and so we grow with it. We went from the industrial age to an information age to a networked world. I think the next stage that we're on the verge of and what we're playing with is the age of creativity. At the end of the day, it's all about relationships.
Welcome to the Differentiation podcast. My name is Michèle Sorgaroli and I'm your host. And today we are being joined by Michael Walsh. It's a real treat. So Michael is a visionary leader, a speaker, and an author 3 times over, I might add. And as I have known Michael for over 9 years now, I've come to realize that he is extremely good at igniting passion and possibility in the owners and leaders of small to medium-sized companies. Apparently, he's been at this for over 30 years, and he likes to quietly serve the owners, hundreds, I might add, hundreds of company owners in their quest, not just for growth, but for meaningful growth, and not just meaningful growth, but growth that gives them access to the core freedoms. Freedom in your business, freedom from your business, and freedom because of your business. And I think we're in for a real treat of a conversation today. Michael, thanks so much for joining us. This is going to be awesome.
Thanks. I want to meet that guy. He sounds cool.
Right? He does sound cool.
I like how you write your bios or your intros. It's like,
oh, freedom. It's all about freedom. So we've got
Absolutely.
some really, right? We've got some really juicy ideas here. So we're going to have some fun talking about these, but the big ones that come out for me are, I know that possibility is a really big one for you, and that passion that you ignite in business owners because of that possibility that you help them see. The place I want to start here is around freedom, because it feels like that's sort of the bigger driver in all of this. And I'd love for you to give us just a little bit of an introduction to why freedom, what's important about it, where did this all begin, if you will, whatever you want to share.
Okay.
Freedom.
Well, here's where I'd start. That is, I'd say that everybody thinks that entrepreneurs are all about the money,
Mm.
and we're not about the money. We're actually about freedom. We want to do the stuff that we love doing. We don't want to be told what to do by the boss, whoever the boss happens to be, or whoever the boss was before in our previous lives. We also want freedom from our business. We don't want to be trapped into anything, including our own companies, and we want the freedom to be able to make an impact. And a business is an incredible tool to help do that. So the reason we talk about freedom is because that's really what the core of every business owner is. People grow their companies to gain additional freedom. Whether it's freedom of self-expression inside the business, whether it's freedom to take more holidays, or whether it's freedom to use the business as a conduit or a tool to make an impact on their families, on some corner of the community, on the people that work with them. I mean, it's so universal. It's kind of hard to say much about because, frankly,
Yeah.
That's what we all want. So, I mean,
Yeah.
that's why I focus on it, because it's what I want too. It's we all want as we go. And then there's degrees to, say, okay, well, I've got freedom to do this, but, I wonder what's possible if we go there, or I wonder what's possible if we go here, and, explore the different options and alternatives that we can create for ourselves using our business as a conduit.
I love that. It's so true. I think that it's so true. A lot of people think that initially the desire to become an entrepreneur or business owner, if you will, is related to the money. But in my experience, and obviously in yours as well, it's really not the case.
Mm-mm.
Um, my, it seems to me, with all the business owners I've worked with over the years, that it seems to be predominantly predicated on, I want to say, time, where they don't want to be told when or how to do something, or there's something about their time and their ability to control their time that seems to be a bigger driver at the beginning. What's your experience of that? That's just kind of, I'm riffing off the top of my head, but that's what it feels like to me in this moment.
Well, time is a factor. I mean, we've got 24 hours every day. It doesn't change. Excuse me, but how we use it obviously does.
Mm-hmm.
So time does play in there. it's for me, it's more about freedom of choice.
Nice.
You know, um, it's interesting because quite often when we look at people who plan goals and stuff like that, which most of us do, um, we tend to not go too much further than where we are. We might go to the next level of where we are, and some people may see one level beyond that, but most people can't see too much further ahead than where they are.
Mm-hmm.
People may have these wild and great ideas, but there's a difference between having an idea and actually being able to see how that could come to be.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is because of our relationship with time. We figure, well, this is what it's going to take to do this, and these are the options with regards to it. And then somebody shows us a different alternative, how you can actually work with others in a particular way, and you can actually generate a much stronger result. But there's many other ways. There's so many degrees of that changes our relationship with time. But for the most part, we actually act like there's one clock and there's one way things need to be, and a lot of the ideas we have are based in that. I don't know. I've never explored this before, but that's an initial cut on that one.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? How our relationship with time and how that is related to the how we implement our relationship with time and what we're able to see and how we see things roll out. There is something constrained by the sense of time and one's relationship with time. As I'm with you, I haven't really explored this to this extent before, but I'm really curious in this moment as we're talking about what causes an entrepreneur to move from being an employee, where most of us have started at some point. There was some version of employeeism. Was that the case for you? Like, were you at one point employed per se and then moved into more of an entrepreneurial venture?
Sure, just about everybody was. I mean,
Just about everybody was.
I
So
came out of
what,
university
right?
and I got a job. I mean,
Yeah. So what caused you, and what was the job, and what was your catalyst for taking the leap?
Well, my undergrad was a double major in commerce and economics from the University of Toronto. So I was all about business, doing stuff around business. Although the economic side was interesting because I didn't just become like an accounting type person. I could have, but I didn't want to do that. There was sort of a wider perspective available through the economic side. So the first job I ended up getting was, I decided I saw myself as the IBM type manager where I tell people what to do and they listen to what I say and life goes really well. And I
love it.
I was going to say I was so arrogant back then, and I got to be careful because who knows, I may be just as arrogant now. I don't know, but I think time is sort of, taking care of some of that on me. Yeah, and one of the things that I found was that I was in financial services, and we were selling investments, and we were involved with different aspects of insurances, but also tax planning and retirement planning and different types of things. Um, the reason that I ultimately left that and went somewhere, there was a couple of reasons, but one of the reasons was that I just didn't want to be under somebody else's thumb.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was in a small firm at one point where I was one of 6 associates in that firm, and I was generating somewhere between 52 and 55% of the gross revenue in the company.
Mm.
There was other people in there and all that stuff. And we had these great offices. But what happened was I started getting shoved into the small one that was just a little too tight and not quite effective. And I was the only one that was having 3 and 4 meetings a day with clients coming in and stuff like that. We evolved to doing financial planning as well as business planning. And I was always far more interested in that side of it. And
in the business planning side of it?
Yeah,
is that what you're
business
saying?
planning side. Yeah, the business planning side. And so, it was just one point where I decided, you know what, I don't want to be controlled by somebody. I don't need to control things, but I will not or would not be controlled.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Somebody pointed it out to me like in March of a particular year, and because we were also doing tax planning and stuff like that, and the deal was you leave your clients at the door if you ever leave, and that's fair. I mean, it's one of the rules they had. And so I lined it up so that at the end of April was actually that year. Of course, as you know, in Canada we have a April 30th
Right,
tax
tax.
deadline. Well, that year April 30th was on a Sunday, so it was Monday, May 1st was the deadline, and so I decided I was, as soon as I'm done all that stuff, I'd lined everything up, and I was, going to head out on my own as far as that's concerned. And I didn't start anything new, so I wouldn't be violating anything. And a couple of people had given me referrals, but I didn't call them because I figured, well, I'm not going to violate anything, and that was fine. So I get to 5 o'clock on May 1st, and I couldn't pull the trigger. It's like I didn't want to confront the person, very
Mm-hmm.
large personality. Um, and then so Tuesday I go in there and May 2nd, and I'm like, I didn't want to do it then either.
Right.
And so what I did was on about 2:30 that afternoon, on the second, the afternoon, I actually didn't talk to the guy. I actually spoke to the guy's wife. And again, she's part of the office and stuff like that. So I told her that I had this plan. I thought, well, that's one way to get it done. Of course, next thing you know, Wednesday morning, I'm in his office, first thing, come in here, sort of thing, and it was interesting. So it's like,
It's
well,
called a forcing function.
yeah, you have to find out some way to do it, right? And it's like,
Well
okay,
done.
yeah. So then Wednesday morning, he's like, so I hear you're looking at heading out on your own. I said, yep. And he's like, okay, well, I don't know how well you're gonna do. And I'm like, well, I guess we'll find out. And he's
Mm.
like, well, okay. Well, how are you lining up an office? I said, no, I'm just gonna work at it. I got an extra room in my home, and we'll actually have an office there. Well, you're gonna need a desk. What didn't you store some stuff in your house for us? And I said, yeah. He said, well, why don't you take one of the desks there? We can do that. And I'm like, okay, fine. And then he's like, and nobody else knows your clients. You might as well take those too. It's like, I just finished with them all. Like, painstaking that was to do. Anyways, it was fine. And then, and I don't know, is there anything else you need? He said, you can hang around here as long as you want. This is a guy that would shoosh you right out the door, right?
Wow.
But he said, probably not too long because, you're obviously wanting to get on with whatever is next, sort of thing. And I'm like, okay. But he wouldn't look me in the eye.
Oh.
Well, he couldn't look me in the eye. I mean, his income just dropped in less than half, and he went from a Schedule A building down to a Schedule C building within 3 weeks.
Mm.
Because it's like, even
Mm-hmm.
though I wasn't going to be doing additional stuff with those clients, it's like
Mm-hmm.
I was the guy that was actually generating revenue.
Mm-hmm.
Now, anybody can have their story about how they were the hero or this and that.
Mm.
Well, like that. You're in a small group.
Mm-hmm.
Not a high bar, but at the same time, I mean, they're really nice people, but I just had a particular knack
Yeah.
in certain areas. But it was fascinating to see that whole thing, and the truth is, I never did want to work alone. I love working with other people, and so I'd look for excuses and stuff, and I started doing a lot more stuff with clients and supporting them,
Mm-hmm.
about things. So, because if you look at the purpose that I've actually held through life, is together with others to explore and unfold what's possible. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, it's about what's possible. What do you think we could do? And then, business was a natural conduit for that. But at the same time, when I was doing stuff with charities, that we'd look at what's possible. And anytime I'm interacting with somebody else or mentoring somebody, or we, have done things with kids with, junior achievement and stuff like that. We'd always play beyond the edges of wherever their capability was, and how do I support them to go to a different level. And part of that actually forced my own growth because I was constantly having to look at that. And again, in small increments, it felt easier. It's probably
Yeah.
harder to do,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, it felt easier to do that kind of thing. And I
Lovely.
have to laugh because I sit here looking, and one of the things that I'll tell people is that it's easier to double or triple your business in 2 to 3 years than it is to have 10% increments
Mm-hmm.
consistently. Just because you outstrip your structures, and you're in a situation where you don't have the structures, but you also haven't built yourself up robustly enough to actually afford the new ones.
Right.
So it's actually kind of miserable. Yet when
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking, it's like, well, a lot of the steps I took were incremental steps. So I guess that's different than doubling a business. I don't know.
That's interesting. Well, sometimes I think the incremental steps I think most of us start out that way. It's very rare for big flying leaps to happen. It does happen, but incremental steps in the early stages, especially as we're finding our feet, in my experience, tends to be the way to go. It doesn't tend to be so big in its early stages of the entrepreneurial journey necessarily. You said something earlier, though. I want to pivot back because you said, I loved how you said this. We were talking about freedom. We talked about choice and the accessing new ideas and possibility. But the big thing that stood out was you said you didn't want to be under someone else's thumb. And then you followed that with, I'm not controlling, but I didn't want to be controlled.
Correct.
And,
I don't
right?
need to control other people. I'm not some control freak. In fact, one of the comments that people who have worked with me and for any period of time, they say, he's not going to give a lot of direction. He's available to answer whatever questions you got, but you're kind of more or less expected to figure it out. And
Yeah.
he's happy to answer whatever you like, but it's
Yeah.
like, well, that's your job. I really don't know. That's why I hired you. You do what you
Right.
need to, and on we
Yeah.
go. And people did, and it was interesting because one of I had a woman that was working with me for about 5 years, and she ended up building courses for seniors, and she ended up getting a job at Vancouver Community Colleges as an adjunct professor teaching internet skills and computer skills to seniors, and this was like 15 years ago. Okay,
Wow.
but she said, yeah, she said, I just kind of had to figure stuff out, so no, he's not controlling, and he's available when I ask him, but I don't always know what to ask, and
Right.
so
Yeah.
I've always done better when people have enough self-initiative that they'll figure it out. If they expect me to tell them what to do, I'm
Yeah,
probably
I
not the
love
best
this.
fit
I
for
think
people.
there's something really powerful in that, in understanding like the level of awareness and appreciation you have and the nuance between being controlled and being controlling. We often don't talk about the nuance and how that is experienced as an individual, as a business owner, as an employee, and your sense of awareness around that is perhaps more overt and more conscious than many. So I'm sitting here thinking, the fact that you don't want to be controlled, that often is an impetus for why an entrepreneur sets out in the first place. They're
Sure.
seeking that freedom, right? And
Yep.
they're not the thing that makes it unique here is as you're helping business owners who are sometimes seen as controlling, not because they are intending to be, but perhaps because they've got a vision of the way they want things to be, or whatever the reason, they can appear to be, excuse me, they can appear to be controlling, even though their intention is not to be controlling. How do you experience that in like, what's as bringing your awareness to the hundreds of clients you've served? How does this nuance play out? I'm curious.
Well, when people try, if somebody's not naturally the kind of person that's just a controlling type individual, and they start controlling, it's usually because they're afraid of something.
Mm,
So, for example, as a company grows, it outstrips its structures, but you're also adding more people. So you've got like a whole bunch of stuff going on. And sometimes it's like, yeah, well, I really want to take care of my people, but at the same time, there's holes in their workload, and it's like I now need to carry, I need to actually like hold them to account or something like that. And they get worried and they say, forget all this nice feeling stuff. We got a business to run and we've got to protect our margins. And it's interesting. Most times that's based in fear. Um, because we all know how to do more than one thing at a time, but sometimes it's hard to build muscle memory around various aspects of things, because sometimes as a business owner you have to do 8 things at a time.
mm.
So how do I actually bring the money into a conversation with staff while at the same time honoring the growth of that person and looking for structures that'll support them to be at their best rather than just try to corral them and get them to do what I want them to do? Like, these are the kinds of things that people have. So I find and that happens with everybody at some point, just because if the game gets big enough, people just get afraid because they go to the edge of whatever their limit is, you know and they either create a mess and then go clean it up. It's their excuse to go back, or sometimes they just don't realize what's going on, and then they hold it. And Canada, we love hockey, and there's a term in hockey. It's called holding the stick too tight. You
Mhm.
hold the stick too tight, you're not going to get a fluid shot off,
Mhm.
at the goalie. So that does happen. And that's the experience that I have. If somebody's just inherently controlling and they try to control everybody, then they're not the type of person that would listen to an outsider. I mean, if you look at how I've positioned myself as a consultant, or even our firm as people who actually support people, you know, a good chunk of our job is to tell people what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. Somebody wants to, people who want what they want to hear. I'm not the, I don't work with those people. They don't want to work with me, and it's fair because how do I help somebody see their blind spots if they don't want to admit that they have any? And most people want to know that. It's just sometimes people have a harder time than others to hear it. That's all. You know, so I mean, there's a number of different dimensions to that. But because I'm autonomous, I'm not one of their employees. They can't sit there and tell me what they can try. But if somebody just wants me to be an outsourced equivalent of an employee, I'm just a bad deal. Charge too much for that. You know, what I bring to the table is really makes sense. If somebody doubles or triples their company, you know, you take, even if a little $2 million company goes to $4 million in 2 years, I promise you've increased their net by a good chunk. And if somebody's at $6 million and you can bring them to 20 million in 3 or 4 years, it's like, you know, those are decent types of increases for people. And it takes 2 or 3 years to do that stuff. But you know, it's interesting because what happens is the people do the doing. You know, part of my job is to help with owners think at a different level, you know. So a lot of it's looking at how they think as opposed to what they do. And anybody who gets that understands that it makes no sense to try to control anybody, because nobody wants to be controlled. Like, nobody wants to be controlled.
Nobody wants to be controlled. Thank you for bringing that up. I was gonna head there. I was thinking, is this desire to not be controlled unique, do you think, to entrepreneurs? But to your point, nobody wants to be controlled, right?
Well, there's only 2 types of people that don't want to be controlled. Okay, people that are entrepreneurs don't want to be controlled.
And everybody.
And people who are not entrepreneurs, they don't want to be controlled. Nobody wants to be controlled.
Nobody wants to
Now,
be
some people like structure. Some people want more structure than others, and that's fair. Some people do really well if you can provide them structure. Other people want a little bit more autonomy, and they want to be able to build their own structures that support them. But that's different than being controlled. That's being supported, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
And so.
Yeah, no, this is awesome. Okay, so we're playing at the edges here of the 2 extremes, right? There's control and then there's freedom at these 2 ends of the extreme. And it feels to me that there's a very profound relationship there that we haven't yet kind of gotten into around, sure, we don't want to be controlled. And then there's the not necessarily controlling, and then there's freedom in all its different dimensions, which we touched on earlier. There's a whole bunch of exploration there. Tell me about the relationship between control and freedom from your perspective, because it feels to me like is there a relationship between them? I'm curious, because it feels like there is to me.
Okay, so can I go in a little bit different place?
Absolutely.
I know that surprises you. It's completely unexpected.
It's only been 9 years of knowing.
There you go. Okay, so you brought up an interesting word. You said relationships. The relationship between control and freedom. But here's the thing, you know, there are also relationships between and among people, right? And so there's you and there's me, and there's this dynamic that sits between us called the relationship. Now, do you control the relationship with me?
No.
Do I control the relationship with you?
Nope.
No, but we both influence it, don't we?
Yeah.
We both have an influence on it, right? But neither one of us controls it. And I couldn't control the relationship with you unless I also tried to control you.
Right.
Now let's just check in on that. So how good are you if you're somebody's trying to control you? How well does that go?
Doesn't tend to go too well.
Yeah, not so well, right? Yeah. Same with me. I know that surprised you, but right? So neither one of us wants to control each other, whether we want to or not. We know it's not going to work. We're smart enough to figure that out. Yeah. So there's this relationship. So we both have influence on relationships. So when you talk about control and freedom, the truth is control's an illusion. You can't control other people. Yeah. People have tried, right? You know, parents finally figured it out that they can't control their kids. I mean, you know, they did studies of millennials, and I haven't seen the new Gen Z studies, but the millennial studies, 83% of all millennials, their number 1 hero was mom. And 82% of all millennials, their number 2 hero was dad. They did similar studies earlier on boomers. What they discovered was 40% of all baby boomers thought they'd be better without parents.
Oh, good heavens.
Okay, because
Really?
guess what? Guess what the parents of baby boomers try to do? Try to control the kids. How will that go? Well, it's called. Of course, you're going to university because you know what? At 18,
Yeah.
it's your excuse to get the heck out of the house,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because you don't
Mm-hmm.
want to be controlled.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Interesting.
whereas and I have to laugh because even my daughter, I mean, love her to bits,
I hope so.
but she's like, Dad, we were raised to like our parents. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Right? Because boomers, Gen Xers, I mean, everybody went through all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see, so parents kind of did realize that, yeah, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
the strict type
Controlling
of
doesn't
control.
work.
Well, it doesn't work anywhere else either, though.
Mm-mm. Not in
People will
any.
put up with it if they need your money. But that's where the whole recent term of quiet, the last 5 years, quiet quitting
Yeah.
came up. Well, that's really just people being disengaged at work and pretending they're doing their job when they're not. So new name, but it was the same
Yeah.
dynamic. It's been around forever.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like can you control anybody? You can
So,
try, but there's an illusion of control. So people feel, well, at least if I got control, then I can actually run my business better, or I can run
mm-hmm.
whatever, the project better. But usually what's happened is control is something attempted when you've outgrown whatever structures serve the situation, you know, like for an example, if I'm an individual, I keep going back to business because I kind of know that part. The An individual contributor gets good at what they do. He or she will get good at what he or she does. Okay. And then they're promoted to management based on how strong they were and how trustable and
Mm-hmm.
dependable and all that as an individual contributor.
Mm-hmm.
Except manager's job is very different from the job of an individual contributor.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of business owners, especially in smaller businesses, they go, no, 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 well, that's the person I trust the most. You know what? I know that I can count on them that the result will occur. And as a manager, they're just accountable for a bigger result. And it's like, it's not quite accurate. If as an individual contributor, this person, okay, let's call him Max. Okay, so we're going with Max, and and so Max gets promoted to a manager. Okay, what got Max to be such a strong individual contributor is he would watch and listen. His awareness allowed for expanded thinking, and he saw possibilities that others didn't see, and he took actions accordingly, generated results. So he actually had an awareness level that impacted his thinking. He was noticing more, he took appropriate action, and he got strong
Mm-hmm.
results. Okay. And the future that led to was, next thing you know, now Max is a manager. So Max thinks, well, if they don't know, I can tell them because I know how to do that job.
Mm-hmm.
Except being told what to do isn't what got Max to be really strong as an individual contributor. His awareness, his evolving awareness, and his thinking got him to take the actions. So when he's there as a manager, what he doesn't yet know is his number one job is to provoke increased awareness and to provoke thinking in his
Mm-hmm.
people, because that's the only way they'll grow.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they do what he asks them to do, especially if he's nice about it, they'll still credit it to him. So now he's a leader with a bunch of soldiers, not somebody who's causing growth in others. And it's fascinating because I saw Gallup surveys, and one of the surveys I saw said that 71% of all managers, and this was a worldwide study, okay, I think there was the first cut of it was 1 million employees and 80,000 managers.
Oh, good heavens.
And then they went to 2 million employees and 150,000 managers, and then the numbers lined straight up. 71% of all managers place themselves in the top 20% of all managers. So, in other words, we have
Let's take
no
that in.
idea whether we're any
Right.
good, and we think we're better than we are.
71% think they're
Said
in
they're
the
in the
top
top
20.
20%.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That's
And so
amazing.
it's like, well, and it's not like we're all dumb. No, it's just that the job is so different, and we think that
Yeah.
what qualified us to get there has
Right.
anything to do with what it takes to do that actual job.
Okay. So you are lighting up like a firecracker in this conversation. So I love that. We're
That's because I
definitely
keep
touching.
looking at the
You're
flower
so,
behind
it's,
you.
I know,
It's
right?
like
It's so
it's
beautiful.
just it's so beautiful.
And there's believe. I believe you.
Great, great, great picture by Brian. Like, hats off to Brian. I mean, come on, you gotta.
All right. So you're lighting up. So what is it about this idea that is so exciting to you? You've captured something. You're onto something. I'm curious. What's underneath this for you?
Well, if you can support people in being able to bring their best, everything just works so much better. I mean, you and I both know we've been in situations where you're working with somebody else or other people where everybody's aligned, everybody wants the same stuff. They're using complementary strengths, they're tag teaming with each other, and they've got each other's back. And a lot of people think that that's utopian. No, I mean, it is. It feels utopian when you're doing it, but at the same time, it can actually be accomplished. And it's interesting because people will go there, and then what happens is they stop looking at the money. See, money, you have to look at the money all the time because guess what? You don't have the money. I don't care how good your business is. It's not actually a business. It's a hobby.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So need to look at the money, but you don't want to put the money as this thing over people. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
But if it's used as a training tool, is if I see where the money is slipping, oh, okay, these are some of the elements that we need to make sure we're including in all that because it's not a complete picture unless we also get the money sorted out too. Because our first job is to be in business long enough to have a second job. It's just like, personal need for survival. Well, the economic need in a business is there too. So a business is about a lot more than the money, but the money is one piece of it.
I love how you
But
said it's a training tool, to use it as a
yeah,
training tool. It's an indicator or something to lean into for. Can you expand a little bit on that before you keep going? I'm curious. I just want to make
sure.
sure that
So
that
let's say
lands.
somebody's working on a project, there's 5 people on the project, and what's happening is that everybody seems to be growing and learning and everything's great and you're 30% over budget. And it's like, okay, so where specifically did we go over? What happened? We got so caught up in Max's growth. This is the early Max before he
Mm-hmm.
grew into the other one. Okay. And his boss, Max's boss is Maxine. And she's like, I love how he's growing. Except Maxine forgot to keep an eye on, you know, uh, some aspect of the money or Maxine may notice and go, okay, so he's excited and
Mm-hmm.
he's spending about 60% more time on his part of this. Huh. Why is he spending 60% more? He's working hard. It's not like he's not trying to do
Mm-hmm.
his job. And then she'll sort of sleuth and go, I think we just haven't given him a structure that allows him to
Mm-hmm.
take this at a different level. And so
So,
time to upskill him so that he can do that. And the money can actually support that type of training so that Max evolves, under Maxine's tutelage. And next thing you know, you've got a tighter system. There's a more appreciation because you also include, we've got anybody can spend twice as much time as they're paid for to generate a result.
mm-hmm.
That's not
What?
mastery.
Yeah, exactly. What I'm really hearing here is that the money is a way of looking at where there might be either opportunities or inefficiencies, or things that the business where the business is thriving or not thriving. The
Yeah,
money
it's
story can tell you that. Is that what I'm hearing?
it's one aspect of it for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Another aspect of it is I've seen situations where the money's absolutely clean
Mm,
and people are miserable.
yeah.
Okay, they're putting in 60, 65 hours a week, and you're wondering they're wearing each other, they're themselves and each other out,
Mm-hmm.
and they're kind of stuck in it. Well,
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't work any better than one where there's no money
Right.
involved.
Yeah.
Although in the short term, you'd think that gives you more latitude, but if people are wearing out, that latitude goes away. It's got a shelf life.
Pretty
So,
quickly.
people don't understand that as a business grows, everybody thinks I get to the million and then I've got it made. And it's like, well, it's true, except here's the thing. As it continues to grow, it continues to get harder. It doesn't get easier, it gets harder. Now, here's the piece why it looks like it gets easier, because business owners get better. We figure stuff out, and so we grow with it, you know. But if you take a look, a business between 2 and 4 million is very different than a business between, say, 5 and 7 million, which is again different from a business that's 8 to 10 million. And there's no way that the structures that lead a $3 million company have anything to do with the structures that you need in a $10 million company.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're literally going to outgrow structures. I have to laugh when people come up with all these formulas for how things go, and you have to put this system in, and people come, people go. Our systems are here to stay. No, they're not. They're not here to stay any more than the people are. Are you kidding? Tell me a $10 million company is going to work with the systems you have at 3 million. Like it just doesn't work like that. Like you literally have different companies. You'll
Mm-hmm.
have common values if you've got the same owners. You might have a few of the same people, and you may have the same product, or even that sometimes morphs and
Evolves,
molds.
yeah.
But let's say you have that. That's about it. Everything else is different. So will people come and go? Yes. Will the structures come and go? Yeah. Like the whole thing keeps,
So you're
uh,
touching on a really interesting idea here, and it's growth, right? Meaningful business growth,
mhm.
and obviously growth excites you. And I'm hearing on the other side of that, and I know you well, so I'm slightly have an advantage here. But I know that there's growth, meaningful growth, and then there's possibility on the other side of that, and growing into that.
Sure.
Um, the thing that I'm wondering about is as we're sitting here talking about how dramatically a $1 million business might be different from a $10 million business per se,
Mhm.
and how and knowing how hard it is for people to accept and enter change. Change is hard. If they know at sitting at, say they're sitting at, I don't know, 600,000 and they're looking at a million and knowing, okay, that's the sort of the first level of the promised land, if you will. And then there's this growth possibility, but they look at that and go, yeah, no, way too hard. And so in my experience, I'm curious, I'm wondering from your experience rather, how do people move psychologically towards being able to go into that journey passionately with enthusiasm? You're great at igniting that passion and enthusiasm and taking away or at least working with that fear of that's a pretty different business. If I'm going to 10x my business, my whole life looks different. That can
Sure.
be scary. How do you deal with that?
Well, first of all, you don't lead with hi. If you go 10x your business, your life's going to be scary. How do you feel so far? Now, and
But
does
people do that
everybody lie?
anyway,
No,
right?
because that's not what the dream is. The dream
But
is
people,
whatever,
if you
whatever.
talk about that kind of growth, people are already gone there. They're like, maybe I don't want that. Like, how many times do you come across that in your business where I don't think I want that business, or do I actually want that? That's a lot more work. So there's built-in hesitation around consequential growth,
Well, here's the
right?
thing: a business will only grow as much as a person does. So if I'm not willing to grow, business is just not going to grow either way. But the other side of it is the biggest fear that people have is I'm going to have to do more of what I'm doing now. Double
Yes.
the business means doing two times as much as I'm doing now. And so I don't even have the time for that. And that's just inaccurate. It's just wrong. It's not accurate. Okay. So the truth is it's not as scary as people feel
Mm-hmm.
because it's a different, now, does it take skills? Yeah, it does. Okay. And it takes skill development and stuff. And, but here's the other side of it. There's as many ways to grow a business as there are people because everybody's got different ideas, different goals, different passions, and different skill sets, right? But the problems are all the same. And the problem, you can actually predict the problems. So if you can identify and see what's coming and you can find ways to work past that, then that's where the energy really comes. And who says you have to do it alone? It was interesting because one of the colleagues that actually went through one of our programs about 20 years ago, he was a PhD. Well, actually, he was a doctorate of business administration, not a PhD, DBA from Harvard. And he said when he was doing his studies at Harvard, one of the things that he did was he had the good fortune to deal with a prof who was doing longitudinal studies of all different types of companies. And he looked at what were the similarities, what were the differences, and he was trying to see what were the signs of success. So they were looking at anything and everything. Were some industries better than others? Were some, this, that, like
Mm.
he just kept putting everything under the thing. And my colleague, of course, he was one of these students in the DBA program, and he said this guy was running everything at us. Like we had to do, analyses for everything. And I said, so what did he come up with? And he said, well, at the end of the day, he found that there was only one thing that they could see a consistent correlation. Okay, you care to share? The guy's name was Ken, and he said, yeah. Um, he said, the higher the number of founding partners, the stronger the business tended to do.
The
Now, a lot of
higher the
people
number of
of
founding
founding
partners, the
partners,
stronger the business. Hmm.
yeah, the better the business did. Hewlett Packard did a lot better than somebody who's going to be a self-employed person. You got Gates and Paul Allen. You got Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. When they had two or more, it did better than if it was just an individual trying on their own. and then, and if you had three or four or five, then you had a different thing. So first of all, to be able to survive, you had to be able to survive each other, and a lot of people have issues around partnerships and stuff like that. So that sort of falls by the wayside. But then what really is you've got a tag team and people working together with each other. And it means I don't have to carry it all myself. You don't have to carry it all yourself. And neither does, Maxine, who's now the boss of many Maxes. Okay. So the three of us we each have our own skills, but collectively our skills add up to a lot more. And as a result, there's a lot more that's available. So that, I found that was fascinating,
Yeah.
but they couldn't find any single other correlation.
Interesting. Well, I think, that's really curious. As you're talking about, you don't have to do it alone. The ability to learn early on in that partnership how to get along and to build, and to however many partners you have, you're learning very early on how to not control.
Right.
Right. And how to address the fear of letting go of things because you already have partners that you're having to work around and with in order for the business to thrive.
Well, and how to build the relationships as well, so they can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the corollary I was going to say. A lot of people go, well, if I'm going from $1 million to a $10 million company, I'd love to do the 10X thing, but that sounds too scary. Well, yeah, but here's the thing. So you will have different iterations of a business there, but the truth is that you're a parent. I'm a parent. Okay. Now think of Natasha, your daughter. Okay. DNA aside, okay?
Yes.
Was Natasha the same person at 3 as she was at 13, or as she was at 23? Or were her behaviors and characteristics much different?
Well, fundamentally, there were some similarities, but certainly how things were expressed was different as she's evolved.
Sure.
At times, yeah.
Well, think about it. At 13, she's going through whatever version or whatever period of puberty she would have had to go. At age 3, you're trying to keep the right stuff in her mouth, right, her vegetables, and the wrong stuff out, the sand in the sandbox. And at 23, she's a whole different person again. I mean, so yeah, are there some characteristics or habits or mannerisms? Sure, those are attached to DNA, but the truth is she's a very different person. Now, how do you survive parenthood? Isn't it the relationship?
Always the relationship, yes.
Guess how you survive the growth of your business? It's the relationships. Yeah. And so when you look at an increased number of founding partners, guess what you have more of?
Relationships.
You have people where you've actually come up with whatever the cadence is you come up with, so that you together could create something that continues to grow. So I mean, at the start of it, it's relationships, but at the end of the day, it's still just relationships. Yeah. And nobody goes, oh, I don't want to deal with my kid at 23. Forget it, I'm not having kids. We don't do that. Some people do. They don't have kids, but other people go, oh, what a cute little baby. Let's have another one. Yeah, that's when the kid's 2. And you know what? By the time, they say it's the terrible 2s. It's not the terrible 2s. They lied. It's the terrible 3s.
That's what I say all the time. I totally agree with you.
That's when they get really interesting, And dads love their kids as they grow. Moms are like, love them when they're little dolls, but then as they grow, it's like, well, dads start to enjoy every single stage.
It's true. Oh my gosh. So, Michael, we haven't touched, I know we only have a few more minutes, but I do want to just bring this in because possibility has been sort of the underlying theme that throughout this conversation as things are lighting up. And so possibility is a huge thing for you, and accessing possibility. And, when we talk about freedom and we talk about potential, we talk about, or rather growth, not potential, freedom, growth, meaning, there's this possibility lingering out there. What is it? Just at the essence of it, what excites you about possibility? Like people talk about possibility, but for you, it's a really, really big thing. Like, it's exciting for you. And I just want to hear a little bit about why.
Well, I don't know that it's possibility itself, but it's like, I wonder what's possible if. So it's possibility is like this conduit to a new and exciting future that we may not have explored before, or that allows for different possibilities. I was going to say. Whatever. What is it about possibility? Well, it's possibilities. That's what. Yeah, I'm the guy that actually gives you the definition of something using the word as part of the definition. It's like, yeah, right. it allows for different pictures of the future that we didn't necessarily see before, or that I didn't necessarily, speaking for myself, that I didn't see before. It's interesting because everybody's been talking about AI. They go on about AI, and you got this and you got that, and well, now Claude is better than ChatGPT apparently. And although there's the ChatGPT proponents that say, yeah, but the next version of ChatGPT is coming out, but Claude came out with co-work, don't you know? And well, Perplexity just came out with computer, and so somebody else is going to come up with something. And Gemini's coming right up the middle of different things using LM, notebook LM or something, right? So there's all these different things, and nobody can figure out any of it, or very few people can figure out all of it. But then somebody said, and everybody always says it's all about the prompts. You got to get better prompts. So you have better prompts. Okay, good. So instead of 2 lines, I put in 4 lines. And it's like, no, that's not what a better prompt looks like. What would happen if you were onboarding somebody? And so I took this seriously. A couple of weeks ago, I was said, if you were onboarding something, what would you share if you were onboarding a new person on your team? You'd let them know your values, you'd let them know your product offering, you'd let them know the different services you offer, the pricing of different things, the history of the company, how we got to where we are, what do we seek going forward, and a whole bunch of things. So they said, ask AI to interview you, ask you whatever questions it felt it would need to come up with a proper onboarding thing. And then you could even use AI as an outsourced employee or an outsourced subcontractor, whatever, if you wanted to hire somebody as a copywriter or as a proofreader or as somebody to help with code, because it's being used a lot in technology or in marketing, different things. Or curriculum development, it could be anything, right? And so ask it to give you the questions and interview you with those questions. And so I promptly put it in ChatGPT and asked that, and I found a lot of the questions were kind of stiff in this, and it was very rigorous. And I had 150 questions. I'm like, yeah, I'm not buying this. Took the exact same prompt, dumped it into Claude. And apparently Claude's one of the things it's known as being more fluent with language and being more, sort of resonant in a lot of the language. So I put it in there. And apparently I like their questions better, although they said very similar things. So I spent the next 3 days, full 3 days, answering all these stupid damn questions that this AI was giving me to answer. So I do that. I'm putting this stuff all in, and then we're going back and forth, and it takes a cut at something, and then back and forth again. And I got about, 3/4 of all the questions answered. I didn't answer the last few. I don't know, whatever. But it kicked out a 48-page master prompt. So that means that when I'm doing a prompt, give that as background information to this is who I am, this is what I'm about, this is the history of our firm, this is the direction that we're headed, this is our ideal client, this is what's there for whom, all that kind of stuff. And then you say, now, take the role of X, whatever the role is you want to have somebody do. Here's the background treat this as an onboarding document, and then you can also put one or more of your books in, and it'll give you background and, on that stuff. We had the branding strategy in there and how the slides have to, all that stuff. And then it starts kicking out, and I'm like, okay, it still didn't give me what I wanted, but at least we're getting a lot closer. So on the learning curve with AI, okay, on the one hand, I would say that I'm like that far in, okay? But it was interesting because just by getting the feedback, and some of the feedback I pulled was off YouTube. There's a lot of people that actually do really good stuff over there. That are sharing it, but it's interesting because the possibilities that you see if you actually partnered with those types of tools and instruments, as opposed to sort of parking your brain and trying to get it to do your thinking for you, there are so many different possibilities, and I mean, I really believe we are completing the information age. We've gone from an information age. We went from the industrial age to an information age to a networked world. But that, AI is drawing a conclusion to that because now information is ubiquitous. Anybody can have anything they want in terms of information. I think the next stage that we're on the verge of and what we're playing with is the age of creativity. It's like those that understand the possibilities of what to do with this stuff, where we could actually make a difference, a meaningful difference in people's lives. That's what there's going to be a market for. There's always going to be a market for people that want to serve and support people, because at the end of the day, it's about how we take care of ourselves and how we take care of each other and how we can learn and grow and evolve and be aware of different things and all that kind of stuff. So even with AI, there's possibilities that are there, and even though I'm on with my little 48-page start, I'm on like the little tiny cusp of the initiation of the thing. It's just there's so much that's beyond it, and that reminds me of a comment that I heard from a number of PhD grads. And what I find is the more education people get, the more they're clear, the less they know.
The more education people get, the more they are clear on the less they know.
Yeah.
Reminds me of the black belt in any martial arts is the grade 1.
Yeah, they know that it's like they don't know very much of any. Now, yeah, they got some stuff, sure, but the truth is that it's like you graduate to the point where there's total awe around
how much is
what's possible, right? So
look at where you went with that. There's total awe around what's possible. I love that. Yeah. Thanks for the goosebumps in that moment. There's just this magnitude of possibility out there, and the further we go, the bigger it gets, is what I'm hearing. That's very cool. And I can see that's what I love that. What you're lit
you
up
say
by.
You can see that's where anything. Listen, I'm talking to a person who's actually initiated a whole program called Expand, and it allows for people that have already achieved a certain level in life to really explore the different possibilities of the universe and different aspects of human behavior and our relationships with each other, and how do we accomplish and how do we support other people accomplishing in life. I mean, but you love what I'm doing. I mean, I'm in the presence of greatness here. I don't even have a flower.
No sunflowers,
and
but
truly,
you do believe.
It's there to believe. I got to tell you, that's right.
Well, yes. I mean, we certainly share. I call it expand. You call it possibility, and moving into the awe of that. And really, what it's about is expanding into possibility. Expanding. That's why I'm all about expansion of potential and what we can reach into. It's just very cool stuff. Michael, it's been, as always, a complete treat to spend time with you today. As we're winding up, as you're reflecting on this conversation, is there anything that you might like to highlight or bring attention to for our listeners today to help them remember?
One thing. At the end of the day, it's all about relationships. That's all I have to say about that.
It's beautiful. Yeah. It's all about relationships. Lovely. Thank you for that. There's so many. I mean, relationships with technology, relationships with people, relationships with yourself, relationships with concepts, right? Just love it. I mean, we could do a whole conversation on that, but I'll stop now.
That'll be the next hour.
Yeah, exactly. So I know you've got a few books out, and there's a whole way for people to get to know you. What would be the best way for people to connect with you, Michael, should they choose and want to find out more about your work?
Contact you. You can put stuff in your bottom of your whatever if you want. I don't know. I don't care. Like, you know what? Contact you. I mean, they'll find the true magic in life if they do that.
There you go. All righty. Sounds good. I will make sure that your website and perhaps your LinkedIn profile are there. And then, of course, anybody can reach out to me if you'd like to find out more about Michael, because we have done some work together. All righty. Thank you, Michael, for today. I will look forward to seeing you again very soon. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Bye for now.